Hello and welcome to another rockin' edition of Saved by the 90s. My name's Adam Patterson. With me today, a guy whose love for third wave ska is only matched by my own Mr. Ken Bakley. Hey, Ken.
Hello.
Music is an element that defines a decade, and the symbiotic relationship between movies and music helps shape how we remember the past.
This month we'll be taking a look at 4 musically charged films released in August throughout the decade, though this is only the beginning of a larger conversation surrounding the cultural impact movies had on music, and vice versa. This is Saved by the 90s.
Hop in, we're going off lunch. Where?
The Barbie McDonald's restaurant.
Welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order?
Wow! The Barbie McDonald's restaurant.
One Big Mac and 2 apple pies.
Hamburgers from the grill. We'll eat with all our friends. Ken's still hungry. Let's go round again.
May I take your order? More apple pies.
The Barbie McDonald's restaurant.
The Barbie McDonald's restaurant playset with drive-thru that really talks. You put it together, dolls and car not included.
Our first title is the second film released this month starring Christian Slater, the former being Young Guns 2, who plays a sassy high schooler who runs a pirate radio station out of his room. With a hard-rocking soundtrack featuring the Pixies, Soundgarden, Bad Brains, Leonard Cohen, and Sonic Youth, this is Pump Up the Volume.
I say that I am deluded.
Listen to this.
Demented.
So who is he?
Deranged.
He's got a pirate radio station.
Guess what I say?
It was too true to last
This is FCC jurisdiction. It's out of control.
and too good to let die.
Don't you see that you're the voice?
Christian Slater,
Sorry about that, folks. Technical difficulties.
Your message is out there.
Pump Up the Volume. Rated R. Preview Sunday, August 19th. Opens August 22nd.
Released on August 22nd, 1990, and directed by Alan Moyle, Christian Slater plays Mark Hunter, an intelligent but shy teenager who has just moved to suburban Arizona from New York. Unbeknownst to his parents and peers, at 10 p.m. each school night, Mark takes to the shortwave radio in his basement and transforms into pirate DJ Hard Harry. Mark's show, at once thoughtful and profane, becomes an underground hit with students at his high school, inspiring the wrath of his principal and the Federal Communications Commission. Adam, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on Pump Up the Volume?
So this is one that I never saw this before, like a year ago. I just watched this for the first time like a year ago. So this was pretty fresh in my mind when I watched it again for this show. And I like this movie overall. However, after you watch it, you're just like, what was the point of any of this? Like the movie itself feels just so like there's just not a whole lot happening here. It almost goes for this kind of Footloose vibe where he's running this like pirate radio station and all the kids are loving it, but the school is hating it and all the parents are hating it, and he's like raging against his school. But I think the big problem that I have with it is that they never really pose a conflict other than that he's just an angsty teen that hates everything. Like I don't see what the big problem is.
Yeah, it's a movie that starts out like really, really strong and promising. Like we'll talk about movies this month that don't move particularly well, but like the first 30, 40 minutes of this are like almost perfect, or at least they were for me. And then as it keeps going and we keep expanding through this world and all of the complications of this entire situation, you do realize that it's not really amounting to anything. It is just a series of scenarios independently of which people seem to be growing increasingly tense over it.
Yeah, and that isn't to say I didn't enjoy the movie or anything. I very much like this movie. I think it's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. But when you finish it, you're just like, all right. It just didn't amount to much. I think that it's just there wasn't much of a conflict. Other than, mm-hmm. At the end when the FCC comes in to shut him down. Like, that was pretty much it. And I also didn't really understand why, like, they made it out to be like he's doing this service. Like, he's telling it like it is, and he's bringing down this, like, this overbearing, horrible school and stuff. And they do, at the very end, sort of allude to some of the shady dealings that the school was doing, where they were like expelling kids for low test scores or something. But it's like that felt so extraneous, and it was like this is not enough for him to be just so angry at what's happening in his school when it just seemed like a normal school.
I definitely agree on that. It did feel somewhat telling that the main conflict of the movie, like the most existential threat to him, the FCC had to literally be characters who were flown in.
Yeah.
But I do like moment to moment. This is pretty good. Like I said, I really felt into it for about the first half hour because I assumed that was going to be like the build up into something. But it's the kind of sort of series of establishing moments that keep happening over and over again.
Yeah, and I think it ends up just kind of fizzling out a little bit. I thought Christian Slater was really good in this.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was the right kind of role for him. I mean, this is when he was really starting to blow up big time, and I thought he did a really good job in it. I think this was after this was after Heathers. Heathers was 89, right? I think
88, I think.
88, and yeah, so he was really on a upward trajectory at this time, and you have Samantha Mathis in there as well, who pretty big 90s name. Samantha Mathis in a lot of big stuff during that time. She plays the love interest, of course, so she her name's Nora in it, and the big thing is like nobody knows that it's him, so he's doing it in secret. By day at school, he's just this kind of really shy, kind of nerdy kid, and he doesn't really talk to anybody, he doesn't really have any friends. And she uses clues that he sort of gives out over the air to piece together who he is, and she figures it out. But even after she confronts him, he is still like really introverted and shy and doesn't want to talk to her. I do enjoy how he just like straight up ignores her at times. Like she'll talk to him and he just like straight up won't say anything. He'll just pretend like she's not even there.
It's a great cinematic moment of someone not talking.
Seth Green is in this, who is, I'm pretty sure Seth Green was in high school for about 15 years during his career. I mean, when you look at the 90s, I think every role Seth Green had, he was in high school. Like the dude he couldn't get out of high school for the longest time.
He was in high school in Bump Up the Volume in 1990. He was in high school in 1999's Idle Hands,
yep,
which we have previously discussed on this podcast. Is like that does periodically happen with actors that they do just get stuck playing high school students for 8 to 15 years.
I have a feeling that if you cast Seth Green in something now in 2019, he would still be in high school. Like you could still probably cast him as a high schooler.
I do wonder if he has played any high schoolers recently.
Other than Chris Griffin.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, sure. That if we want to be technical, he's also been playing a high schooler on. He's been voicing a high schooler for 22 or however long that show's been on years.
Yeah, he's one of these people who doesn't age at all, ever. Mm-hmm. And I think he was probably in high schooler roles before this too.
He does feel like he plays the kind of characters who do have that specific kind of like high school student energy to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like just like a giant, like just playing around with like this sort of giant field of over-energized anxieties.
I mean, it wasn't a big role that he was in or anything. He had a few lines, but nothing major in this. You do get to see Christian Slater playing a lot of music. You get to see him grooving out. The scene when he's dancing to the Beastie Boys was really cringe-inducing.
Mm-hmm.
A few movies this month had some pretty cringy moments.
But you do have to love any movie where the first thing you hear, not only the first music cue, the first thing you hear is a Leonard Cohen song.
Yeah, you hear that Leonard Cohen song a lot because that's like his intro. Like every night when he goes on, he plays the Leonard Cohen song. You actually hear a few Leonard Cohen songs in this. Mm-hmm. I'd say it's a pretty good soundtrack overall.
Oh yeah.
There's some good stuff. It's interesting because this is a movie that came out in 1990, and it feels very much like an 80s movie, as most movies from 1990 do. However, the music, to me at least, feels much more modern than 1990 because you have a lot of the kind of like punk music and stuff in there that I don't know, for some reason it feels more modern. Like you have the Descendants and Bad Brains and stuff. And I know that those are 80s bands, but for some reason the musical vibe felt more 90s to me.
I can understand that. I also kind of had that takeaway. Maybe it is the ideal early 90s movie in that respect because it blends a lot of 80s and 90s feeling together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like the look of the people there's still a lot of 80s style in there as far as like hairstyles and clothing and whatnot, but you could tell that this was in a transitional period.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it was just pretty ridiculous though. When it came
definitely.
When it came to the like the FCC stuff and just like the outrage that the parents in the school had over this radio station, just losing their minds over this radio station and like all of this stuff. And the one guy, I can't remember. I think he was a teacher or something, but he goes, "Look, I work with teenage gangs in the city. I say we go after this guy." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. What are you trying to say? You're going to like gather up the gangs and have the gangs hunt him down? What are you doing?"
On the very entertaining podcast called You're Wrong About, it's a show that kind of every episode is a deep dive into a different moral or social panic from the past, and usually shows how it was very highly misconstrued by middle class white America to demonize people who were not affluent white Americans. They just did an episode on the like teen gang crisis of the late 80s and early 90s, and so I thought that was a very fun reference just to that, just to a moment where you could just throw that reference around and it would just feel like it carried some weight or just would stand out just as a line on its own. But in terms of like disproportionate government response to things, which we might talk about in another movie on this episode, would the FCC have really cared enough to send a physical person there?
Not just one person either. They had like a whole fleet of vans and all that.
Like at the most, there would have been like
letter.
Maybe a couple of letters.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's a high school kid running a pirate radio station. And I mean, they sort of, at the end when they show like all of these other pirate radio stations popping up across the country, like alluding to the fact that he like started something, like he started something. And I think he even says it at one point, like we've started something here.
Is the 1992 presidential election in this universe, is one of the major issues in it what to do about these youth pirate radio stations?
The dreaded pirate radio stations.
The centrist, like new Democrat era, instead of like, you know, bad welfare reform policies, they go on bad punitive crackdowns on pirate radio.
I mean, I think pirate radio stations I think it's a really interesting topic. And I think that's one of the reasons I like this movie so much is I like learning about the different pirate radio stations that were prevalent back in the 80s and 90s. And I mean, you don't really hear about them anymore now that anybody can have an internet radio station. I don't think I'm sure that there probably are pirate radio stations still in existence, but there's you know, very few and far between. And there's like documentaries out about like big pirate radio stations and stuff. And I think it's a really cool time when those existed, and you'd have these like just crazy stations that weren't bound by any kind of FCC regulations and stuff. And you do hear about, you know, the FCC going and shutting some of the big ones down, but nothing like, you know, a high schooler that's
like they felt like they were like, yeah, this is a high school and it feels like they're about to send in like the national bird.
Yeah. And it's like she has like a shortwave radio that only goes for like several blocks. Like the people that want to listen to his program have to actually drive to a place where it actually comes in. Like it doesn't reach the whole town even. So I think a lot of the pirate radio stations that were famously shut down by the FCC and people like were thrown in jail, those are like bigger operations that would like encompass a whole city or something.
In the world of Pump Up the Volume, the backlash against pirate radio is so extreme, and and non-sanctioned broadcasting that I imagine podcasts are never invented in the universe of this film.
Probably not. Is nobody wanted to do it. Everybody was all about that pirate life, that pirate radio life. Podcasts were never even a thought.
Nope.
Yeah, so I think that the topic is interesting. I love movies that involve a moral panic of some sort, and this certainly it has that topic where like we talked about, the community is just so up in arms over this because he's just so vulgar. And
yeah, I love a good moral panic movie because it does get right that no matter how exaggerated they get, although this does push it, usually no matter how exaggerated a movie gets in depicting a moral panic, you can usually find an actual moral panic that was similarly exasperated over a similarly inconsequential issue. This one pushes it though.
But a lot of them do push these things into fun directions. I can't wait until we look back at the various moral panics that happened during this time, because I feel like with some moral panics you don't realize it when it's happening. It's only after you look back and you're like, oh yeah, that was a thing for a little bit. 10 years from now, and we look back at 2019, like what kind of ridiculous things were people losing their minds over?
I don't know. It feels like right now there's so many completely valid things to lose your mind over.
That is true. And also I feel like this is a time when there's about 25 moral panics that are happening all at once, not rather than just like one big one, like
there's not
the satanic panic or something.
We're past the era. We feel like we're past the era where like one thing could grip the entire nation at once.
That's a shame.
Which is almost a shame.
We didn't talk about the director, Alan Moyle.
Also directed Empire Records.
He did Empire Records, which we covered on a previous episode. Maybe one of the most 90s movies ever made, I would say.
I rewatched that recently. I like it.
I like it too. I like it too. That's probably the only other like really big movie that he, like, recognizable movie that he directed. But he also directed a movie in 1980 called Times Square, which is a fantastic little movie about two women from New York just running around New York City, just tearing stuff up in New York. And I highly recommend checking out Times Square. It's really good. I saw it for the first time maybe a couple of years, 2 years ago or something. But it's really, really fun.
In terms of great movies about people just going around New York at that specific time, I've also recently watched for the first time Desperately Seeking Susan and Married to the Mob, and those are also great movies about people going around to New York in that time period. Although Married to the Mob, it's eventually they go to Miami, but it's mostly in New York. Our next movie was directed by Alan Parker, whose feature films would earn 19 BAFTA Awards, 10 Golden Globes, and 10 Oscars. While he's most known for two other musical films, Pink Floyd, The Wall, and Evita, in 1991 he directed another music-themed title. Released on August 16th, this is The Commitments.
The Commitments is one of the best films I've seen in a long, long time. The purest, raunchiest, most exhilarating film of the season. The Commitments is a loud, rollicking comic extravaganza. A 10+, a totally unique film. There's no resisting The Commitments, a film with a sound so potent it could probably liberate the world. The Commitments, rated R, starts Friday at select theaters.
It could probably liberate the world. Jimmy Rabbit, just a tick out of school, gets a brilliant idea to put a soul band together in Barrytown, his slum home in North Dublin. First, he needs musicians and singers. Things slowly start to click when he finds three fine-voiced females virtually in his backyard, a lead singer at a wedding, and responding to his ad, an aging trumpet player, Joey the Lips Fagan. Ken, what did you think of The Commitments?
I didn't mind that it was on when I was watching it, but there were long stretches of time where I didn't fully understand why things were happening in the order they were happening in. Mm-hmm. Like, this feels like a case of another movie where usually I don't mind the kinds of movies where it feels like it's got kind of a more structurally simple flow, but that also makes it harder for me to really zone into it sometimes. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is based on a novel by Roddy Doyle. Obviously, I haven't read the novel because I didn't like the movie growing up. My parents were really into this movie. They loved it for some reason. And the soundtrack was very popular. And they played the soundtrack over and over again for maybe years. It might have been years that they were playing this soundtrack, and I couldn't stand it. I hated it so much, and I hated the movie, and I haven't watched it since I was a little kid. And so I was most, out of all the movies that we cover this month, I was most interested in this one because I just wanted to see if I still hated it as much as an adult as I did as a little kid watching this. And I didn't hate it. I didn't particularly love it or anything. I think the big thing is I'm not particularly into this style of music. And I think if you're not really into soul music, that could be problematic in a movie that features a lot of soul music. However, it features a lot of soul music, but at the same time, not as much as it should, because I feel like they repeat songs too many times in this. And that's a problem I have with a lot of movies that are about bands, where there'll be like one song and they'll play it like 5 times. And I find that to be a little bit grating, especially if it's a song I don't particularly like. And so at the end of the day, I didn't hate this movie. I thought it was fine. I think it's a little messy. It's a movie that meanders a little bit too much for my liking. And by the time it's over, I mean, it's like 2 hours long, but by the time it's over, you're just like, all right, there it was. It was about a group of people and they formed a band and then they played like 3 shows and then they broke up. And that was it.
That's the story.
That's the story.
I feel like sometimes a movie would have to be careful if it does have that loose style and is as long as this is without a particular direction. Because at any time in the 2 hours of this movie, I could have checked like the progress bar, and it could have said there were 75 minutes left or 5 minutes left, and I would have believed it. Every scene in this movie feels like it could be the next to last scene.
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't know where it's going. You don't really see an arc for any of these characters or the narrative. You don't. It just sort of staggers from one scene to the next, and
I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but there has to be some other compelling factor to it, and I just couldn't really connect with it on that level.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the issues that I had with it is that you have a lot of characters in this. I mean, the band is comprised of a lot of different people, and I feel like they don't really dive into these characters too much. Much of the movie is just spent with them sort of bickering and bantering with each other. And I feel like for the most part, we only really get to know a couple of these characters. I mean, you have the main character played by Robert Arkins, Jimmy, and we get to see a little bit of his backstory and stuff. But for the most part, they don't really dive too deeply into the other characters. And I thought maybe that was a little bit problematic too, especially because you have such a big ensemble cast here. And to be clear, like a lot of the characters were interesting. I just maybe wanted a little bit more of the character development rather than just scene after scene of them playing and then arguing and then playing and then arguing. And it felt a little bit repetitive.
It establishes this formula that it feels comfortable with and then seems overly hesitant to break it in the service of some bigger or more well-developed story. And so it just is. It just... That's why I said what I said at the start. I didn't mind that it was on while I was watching it.
Yeah, it seemed like it was a soundtrack in search of a movie. The music was front and center here, and it seemed like they were just looking for an excuse to play music. And the music was fine. all of the people involved were very talented, and even though the music wasn't necessarily my style or something I would listen to, and maybe that's just because of my parents playing it nonstop when I was younger, and I just grew to grew to hate it. But it was all really well done as far as the music.
Yeah, I didn't mind the music. I didn't mind the characters. I didn't even mind the structure of the. I just thought altogether, it needed something more to sustain all of these different parts.
Yeah, I agree. You have Colmini in there as Jimmy's dad. He was great. Loved Elvis. Just always talking about Elvis. And the guy, I don't see him on the list here, but he's the guy from Once, if you remember that movie Once. Glenn Hansard is his name. He was an Oscar winner in 2008. It was pretty good.
It was the John Carney movie.
Yeah, John Carney, yep.
Adapted for the stage at some point, I believe.
Mm-hmm. It was, yeah. Pretty good movie. And he plays in this is the guitarist in the band. Interestingly, a lot of the people involved in this didn't really do much after this movie. I don't know if maybe they were mainly musicians to begin with, and that's why they were brought on. You also have Maria Doyle Kennedy in there. She was one of the 3 backup singers. She would go on to do like Orphan Black and some other bigger things. She was in Sing Street. She's really good.
John Carney.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another John Carney. Yeah, I like Sing Street. I find it odd that I've only seen. I think that's the only John Carney movie I've seen, and I liked it. And I liked it despite all of these complaints that some people had about it, which would make me think I would like the other ones, but I haven't gotten around to seeing them yet.
I didn't hate Sing Street. I thought it was okay. I thought it was fine.
I love movies that have a giant, big fantasy musical sequence in the middle of it.
Well, there you go.
It seemed like it was made for me.
Yeah, Sing Street's fun.
Mm-hmm.
The Commitments, it's a little bit. There's a little bit of fun in there. There's some comedic moments in there. I think it could be considered a comedy by and large.
I feel like we need a term for. We need a new genre descriptor for movies that are just kind of like this.
I think a movie like this on the weekly podcast, Kevin and I call them manila folders, where they're just these things that kind of exist and you don't have a lot to say about them, and they just exist. They're just there.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is a little bit of a manila folder.
That fits. That works. It works.
Yeah.
I like that.
That tracks. I liked the location of this. You have it taking place in these sort of this urban decay, a lot of like kind of slums and like kind of nasty looking places. And I thought that all that stuff looked really good.
Very much a specific period of like recent Irish history before the recent major wave of economic development.
So in that regard, I thought it was kind of a cool little time capsule.
Yeah. I love movies set in specific cities at extremely specific times. I feel like one of the peak versions of that is Taxi Driver being filmed during like the like garbage collector strike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's just like layers of trash everywhere.
I'm obsessed with New York City movies that take place in the 80s and like late 70s.
The Ford to City Drop Dead era.
Yeah, I will pretty much watch anyway. I watched Cruising for the Blu-ray, the new Blu-ray that came out, the remaster, and man, what a great looking movie.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I don't really have anything else to say about The Commitments. I thought it was okay. I did not despise it like I did when I was a kid, although I still find the music to be slightly annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think that's because my parents ruined it for me.
I mean, yeah, I feel like you can't always like separate yourself from these immediate like prior preconceptions or histories of movies, but at the same time, it's like searching for an objectivity that nobody really has. So Yeah, I think it's important that you have that you bring in that perspective going in.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't hate it as much as
Yeah.
I did when I was a kid. Like I certainly have a newfound respect for the movie, and I found it to be certainly more entertaining. And one thing I remember is like I found it to be dreadfully boring when I was a kid. Like I didn't. Not only did I not like the music, but I just found everything about it to be very boring. And
yeah, I mean, there are parts like sections of this movie that are kind of hard to endure.
Yeah, I was just
from
gonna
a pacing point of view.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I did find areas of it to be pretty dull, but not nearly as dry as when I was a kid watching this.
How old were you when you saw it?
Oh, probably 10, maybe.
Yeah, this would be rough for like if you were very young.
Yeah, it was probably
it can be a real attention span tester.
It was probably whenever it came out on video. We didn't own it on video, but I think it was like a Blockbuster rental. And then they bought the soundtrack like right after seeing the movie. And I believe there were actually 2 volumes to the soundtrack. I think there were two soundtracks, and they just had the first one. Yeah. Just having horrible flashbacks to hearing the soundtrack over and over and over.
I did not mean to start the sidetrack that would bring you back to that memory.
Oh man, the commitments.
Are you ready for now? 17 of today's hottest superstars in one all-new Power Pack collection.
One of the biggest and possibly most annoying trends I remember from the late 90s was the release of the popular Now That's What I Call Music series of CDs and cassettes. These commercials would be on TV incessantly, always reminding us to pick up the latest compilation of seemingly random pop hits.
The series first began in the UK in 1983 by Sony Universal Music, but didn't make its way over the pond until 1998. Although the proliferation of CD sales has dwindled massively over the years, the Now series is one that is somehow held on and continues to see new editions and spin-offs released every year.
Yeah, so do you remember the Now series? Like, where do you remember like seeing ads and stuff for them?
I certainly knew of them for a very long time because for whatever they say about the popularity of CDs, they can certainly advertise.
Yeah, it's when this thing first came out, it was just everywhere. I don't even know anybody that actually owned one of them. Like none of my friends had them, but they were all over TV, and the ads were just on all the time, and they had like regular ads, and then but most of them were like the really long commercials that were like, most commercials are 30 seconds, and these were always like a minute and a half long, and you're just like, all right, like come on now.
I like the music. I always like the music compilation ads when they do this track listing. They highlight the one that's currently being sampled.
That's something that they didn't actually do with the Now ones.
I can't recall seeing that on a Now. I'm just saying in general.
Oh, those were great. Yeah,
those deeply amuse me. I also feel like throughout the course of this discussion, I've got like as memeable as the Now That's What I Call ... formula is. I'm going to keep confusing it with the even more memeable Kids Bop series.
I thought,
even the concept of Kids Bop is hilarious to me. And even more so, someone's keeping track of Kids Bop because they will always regale the internet with whatever surreal choices they have made on what at a given moment is or is not appropriate for children in a song, and what they choose to replace is always so arbitrary.
Yeah. The Kids Bop thing. I was thinking about that when we were talking about what to discuss in the non-movie portion of this episode, and I did think about Kids Bop because that was also one that was maybe as egregious as the Now series as far as like ads on TV.
I mean, Kids Bop takes it all up to a whole different level because now that's what I call music. Kids Bop is actual re-recordings of music.
Right. Yeah. And they were like so ridiculous. Some of the ones. I mean, I obviously have never heard an actual Kids Bop album, but
Neither have I.
just the little snippets that they play in the ads. That oh my god, just
truly something else.
Yeah. So, like we said, the first series was released in 1998 in the U.S. and this, which is funny because like these were being released for decades or over a decade in the UK before they finally came out in the United States, and it sold extremely well. The first 29 volumes of the Now series received at least a platinum certification.
Really?
And 18 albums from the series have reached #1 on the Billboard 200 albums chart. That's more than any individual recording artist except the Beatles. Now, they obviously have dwindled in the years since. So Now 34 sold 88,000 copies in its first week compared to Now 7, which sold 621,000 copies in its first week.
We are now up to Now Volume 71.
That is correct. Now
I have the
71.
volume. I have the track listing for Now. That's what I call Music Volume 71 pulled up in front of me right now.
I'm sure it's
the problem.
Incredible.
Actually, the problem with this is that you can't really make any fun of the track listing for a Now That's What I Call Music CD because mostly it's just songs that are that have been popular in the past couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
It's more the continued idea of it that I find so amusing. Like, there's no. What is the value of Now That's What I Call Music on CDs or as separate streaming or even as like to stream? Like it says stream/download. Why?
That, yeah, like, the streaming, I mean, I'm sure that they just did that to try to pivot into that market, but I can't imagine most people are like, oh, let's stream the Now That's What I Call Music. I mean, when you have like Spotify and you can listen to everything on that album.
Like Spotify has taken the very last vestiges of what value this seems to have and taken it completely away from it.
Now, I did read that what they started to do in the later editions was including exclusive songs on there that are not available anywhere else from like up and coming bands and stuff. I think that they started doing that with the special edition of the Now albums, which were like sort of genre specific. Like Now That's What I Call Country. Now That's What I Call Motown. And they would include bonus tracks from like new artists in that genre.
Yeah, I see 4 tracks here with the Now What's Next label, so I'm assuming that's what that is.
Yeah, I believe so. So, you know, that's something that they tried to, or I guess are trying to do to help with the streaming, you know, present that we live in now. But I think that, you know, probably for the most part, they're catering towards the older generation of people that still buy CDs and don't do the streaming stuff and, you know, go to Walmart and pick up the latest Now release and just jam out to Now That's What I Call Music.
I'm confused by that utility, though, because not to make assumptions, but after a certain point, you might not be at a stage where you're particularly interested or feel particularly compelled to keep up with new music. And I can't imagine that age, like whatever age that is particularly congruent, like with that desire. Like, as the number of people that are you know, as the share of the market that streaming does take up goes bigger and bigger, I feel like even that like buffer zone between age groups is also whittling out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure at some point it's just going to go away. Like there's just it's just not sustainable.
But I would have said that would have happened 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think probably a lot of boomers are probably picking up these albums where there's still enough pop music that's being released that they want to stay hip and listen to. Now, I don't have the track listing for 71 in front of me, so
I've got it right in front of me.
I'm assuming that it's probably more like there's probably no trap music in there. It's probably more like general pop music.
I mean, it's just It is. It's just kind of a general survey of things that are popular right now, is how I would describe it. Just the new Jonas Brothers song is the first track. There's a Shawn Mendes song at 2.
Yeah.
Ariana Grande is at 3. Ava Max is on track 4. The dueling number, the current number 1, Billie Eilish's "Bad Guys" at number 5. 6 is a Post Malone song. 7 is "Old Town Road," the 19-week long Billboard number 1 hit that Billie Eilish's "Bad Guy" dethroned this past week.
So these are all fairly inoffensive tracks that you could imagine yourself hearing when you go to the dentist. You know, like these are waiting room.
This is just
style.
on like any like current rotation hit station.
Yep. So it makes sense to me that I think that this would appeal to boomers that, you know, they listen to, you know, your FM radio station at work or whatever, and you like some of the songs, and you want to hear that Old Town Road song, and you want to pick up the now that's what I call music.
Old Town Road has been around for so long, for such a good amount of. It doesn't even feel like a song; it just feels like a utility at this point.
Yeah,
it feels like an extra sound of everyday life. Like it just goes right along with like passing cars or trains. Like you hear a car, you hear a train, you hear a bird chime, you hear Old Town Road.
It's just the general soundtrack of life at this point.
Yeah. I like maybe they're making money because they sell these like in bulk directly to dentist offices.
That could be. Yeah, there might be some sort of commercial use for these. Like they might actually sell these to like doctors' offices and stuff that don't want to play like the warm 103 easy listening radio stations. It could be. Looking at volume 1 of Now That's What I Call Music, which came out on October 27th, 1998, you have Janet Jackson, Backstreet Boys, Fastball, Harvey Danger, Spice Girls, Casey and JoJo, All Saints, Hanson, Cherry Poppin' Daddies. So you got a pretty good mix here of you know, various trends. You have your swing music, you got your R&B, you got your one-hit wonder rock groups like Harvey Danger and Fastball, and you got Aqua with Barbie Girl, Lenny Kravitz, Marcy Playground. So you got some alternative in there as well. Everclear. What a great lineup. Tonic.
Now I'm just completely haunted again by the idea of who exactly is buying this, because I don't know. Like, what is this cutoff here? Because when you talked about that earlier, like boomer interest, I don't know the exact age demographic of people who are reading Slate magazine in the year 2019, or Slate.com rather. All I do know is that there's a writer there, like Chris Melaniphy. He also does the Hit Parade podcast, and he does a column for Slate called "Why Is This Song Number One?" where every couple of weeks, when there's a new song on number 1 on the Billboard charts, or I guess that would kind of be difficult for him to do this summer, because there were maybe 2 songs that were number 1 on the Billboard charts this summer. He'll do a column on exactly his hypothesis about the conflation of like events in this artist career and pop culture at large that have brought the song to be the number 1 hit in America. And I don't know the average age of like a Slate Plus subscriber who can write these comments, but all the comments in the article are like straight up angry at him that he would waste his time, that they would waste the site's time by writing about this modern music that doesn't mean anything. Like, people get so angry at the mere idea that Slate, which is given, you know, more than enough time and more than enough hot takes, like Slate pitch is like a derogatory term, but for some reason the Slate readership is extremely angry that Chris Melaniphy has a column where he just writes about current number 1 hits. They get so upset about it.
The now 29. Oh no, hold on. I'm looking for the one that's sold the most. It looks like Now 44. Now 44
won 7 times platinum.
Yeah, that was the 7X platinum. That was their big one. I don't have a track listing on that one, but
well, that appears to be the UK one now that I look closer.
Oh, is it? Oh yeah, you're right. You're right.
Although now the US now 5 went 4 times platinum.
Jeez.
In Sync, 98 Degrees, Destiny's Child, Candy, Jessica Simpson, Soul Decision, Mystical, the everlasting hit Aaron Carter's Aaron's Party, parenthetical, come get it, close parenthetical.
Oh my God, I remember that song. Oh man, Aaron Carter. He was like the 90s Justin Bieber for like a minute. He wasn't nearly as big. But man.
Now, this is going to be an extremely niche reference for about 1 to 4 listeners, statistically speaking. In the mid-2000s, there was a PBS show, like a PBS like kids show. Like it was just kids doing various challenges. And one of them, the challenges one time, was to direct a music video for a new Aaron Carter song in 2005-2006. I feel like 2005-2006 was post Aaron Carter's peak, which makes this all the more amusing that was the subject of an episode. I believe the other constant was not only did it have to be the song, the stars of the music video had to be the kid contestants' grandparents.
Oh my God.
I haven't seen that episode since I was young, but I have to imagine I would very much enjoy rewatching it, and a bunch of vaguely irritated grandparents that somehow got roped to this because their grandchildren are on television.
Oh my God.
Who had to spend an entire day appearing in these music videos.
It sounds incredible. I'm sure that's on
I have
YouTube.
To find that. Is that on YouTube?
I'm sure that's on YouTube.
Show on YouTube?
It's got to be. It sounds too good to not be on YouTube.
But if you ever wonder what was happening in Aaron Carter's career, and I think about 2006, that's what was happening.
I know that it came out in 83, but just for reference, Now One in the UK had Phil Collins, Duran Duran, UB40, Casey and the Sunshine Band, Culture Club, Men Without Hats, Kajak Ugu, Men at Work, Rod Stewart. This was a heavy hitter. Now One.
That's such a combination of times there. Eras.
Yeah. Released on vinyl and cassette. Man, I'm gonna have to get Now One on vinyl.
Did you know that the Did you know that the Billie Eilish song "Bad Guy" is available on cassette and Flexidisc?
Flexidisc. Wow.
Flexidisc is like the thin vinyl records you would get in like magazines.
Yeah. Yeah, I have
Bad
some
Guy
of those.
is on Flexidisc.
I have some of those.
Buy Bad Guy on Flexidisc now.
I mean, I know that they still sell cassettes because they still, like, there's a couple record shops around where I live that I just went to a record store recently and they had like new cassettes there and I'm just like, what? Like this, I can't believe this. And they have like a whole cassette section there. I'm going to start calling up record stores and be like, hey, do you have Now That's What I Call Music 1 from November 28th, 1983? And just see if I can track this thing down. I don't know why, but I want to own Now That's What I Call Music 1 on vinyl. Even though I don't currently have a record player that's in working order.
I mean, just to have Now That's What I Call Music 1 on vinyl.
I mean, I don't think they released it on vinyl. The first one that was in the US, the one from 98. I don't think they released that on vinyl. I think it was just CD and cassette. But man, if I could get the US one on vinyl, that would be incredible.
You know what makes Bop an even better song? The vinyl scratching, like the little crackles.
Yeah, that deep vinyl sound that you get, man. They also released a bunch of DVDs. So starting in 2001, they released Now That's What I Call Music 2001, the DVD, which I'm assuming had music videos on it.
Yeah, I guess it would just be a music video compilation. Again, another thing that doesn't have a place anymore. Nothing that this company can do really can exist, has a reason to exist in the current landscape. Nope.
They released the Millennium series, which came out in 1999, and it went through from 1980 all the way up to 1999. So each edition was 1 year. I guess that's something that exists.
What about their? I can't think about Millennium about that unless I think about the Will Smith album
Millennium, classic, classic Will Smith right there.
I feel like this podcast is just about is just me talking about other podcasts I listen to. I swear, half the podcasts I listen to have made reference to Millennium.
And well, now ours is included.
Yes, we add ourselves to the Millennium discourse.
Not only are they still releasing the Now That's What I Call Music CDs, they're still releasing the like offshoot ones too. So you have Now That's What I Call a Summer Party 2019, which came
What's
out
on that?
Which came out in June 28th. So that just came out not too long ago. Let's see what's on Now That's What I Call a Summer Party 2019.
I thought it would just be like the landscape of a summer party in like a family barbecue, like just the sounds of a family barbecue, where it gets really depressing later because they just start arguing about politics.
You just hear screaming kids in the background and people arguing.
Adults, like the adults having a terse conversation because someone because the requisite Republican uncle started like talking about like defending Trump.
So, big surprise, the first track is Old Town Road remix.
Oh, who would have guessed?
There you go.
Once again, I thought there'd be I thought that was a joke. I thought there'd be songs. I just think it wouldn't be an ambient sound of everyday life.
That would be better than what we have here.
I don't even have an opinion on Old Town Road. I'm not for Old Town Road. I'm not against Old Town Road. It's just a sound of life at this point for me.
I mean, I'd rather not listen to it.
I don't need to listen to it anymore.
Yeah, so Now That's What I Call Summer Party 2019. It just has some generic pop stuff on here. Looks like it leans more towards... No, it doesn't. It doesn't really lean more towards anything. It's just generic pop songs. I don't really...
I thought they maybe try and stake a claim what they think the song summer is going to be.
Yeah, and doesn't look like it, though.
Not a hard guess to figure out what the song in the summer of 2019 is.
Yeah, and there's also Now That's What I Call a Party 2019.
Is that for winter?
Not to be. It did come out in November, so it should not be confused with the other one. This looks like it's more of a New Year's thing, like for a New Year's year-end party.
I thought it was like a summer party for the Australian ones.
Maybe. Yeah. This one includes songs from LMFAO.
How is it a party
Kesha,
if you have to hear them?
Missy Elliott. Yeah, no. Yeah, just another just total mishmash of pop songs. Looks like Disney got involved. There was in 2018. There was Now That's What I Call Disney Bedtime.
I feel like I should make one final observation. I'm not saying that anyone has a good memory of 6th grade, but my memories of 6th grade are even worse because I know I'm going to make myself sound very young again. All of my memories of 6th grade have somehow been infiltrated by the fact that Party Rock Anthem was a hit song during that time.
Oh my God. I can't even remember what the hit songs were when I was in 6th grade.
I wish I could forget this was a hit song. This song, Party Rock Anthem, went diamond. Not even a platinum. It went diamond.
I hated that song. Oh,
Why did it go diamond?
I really couldn't stand that song, but I dislike most pop songs, to be honest. Now That's What I Call Disney Bedtime, soothing lullaby versions of Disney classics. There's so many of them. There's like so many of the
So they just take songs and turn them into lullabies. There are groups that just do that. They just do lullaby style covers of songs. I seem to remember there was a lullaby cover of the Pixie song "Where Is My Mind" that was used on a Criminal Minds episode. Not the song not the actual song, the lullaby recording of it.
There's so many out of all the songs that get remade and covered. I feel like that song has to be near the top of the list of most covers done. Every band does their own version of "Where's My Mind," which, by the way, there were a couple. Was it? Oh no, maybe it was a different movie that I watched. There were a couple movies that I watched this weekend that featured the Pixies. I know that Pump Up the Volume had the Pixies, and there was another movie that I watched also. Oh, you know what? Maybe it was 13 Reasons Why. I think it was actually that I had the Pixies. Oh man. Oh boy.
What an inescapable nightmare that show is.
Yeah, which is a shame because I really love the Pixies. I mean, come on, who doesn't?
Yeah,
love the Pixies. Anyway, that's what I call music. It is a behemoth that somehow refuses to die.
Can we please talk about music compilations every month and every now and then?
That was fun. I mean, I said it before, we said it at the top of the show that I think that music themes is something that we will definitely touch on again once the right month comes around. But
yeah, I know a running joke is things that this podcast is now, but I'm entirely serious. This is now that's what I call music podcast.
I mean, I'm totally down for diving into Kids Bop. I want to take a deep dive. I want to set up interviews. I really want to get behind how these Kids Bop albums are created and
also why are they created?
Yeah. Oh man.
While hair metal may have ruled the 80s, the grunge movement that arose in the 90s proved influential in removing the big hair, glitz, and glamour of heavy metal and boiling it down to its aggressive roots.
The heavy metal genre is something that one needs a complex infographic to even begin to decipher, with its numerous various variations and offshoots, many of which were conceived throughout the 90s. Our next feature involves a group of metalheads willing to go to some great lengths to get their shot at stardom. Released on August 5th, 1994, this is Airheads.
20th Century Fox invites you,
Even though you're a goon,
to live it up with
the Lone Rangers? There's three of you. You're not exactly lone. No idea what you're saying right now.
So grab a ticket.
I know the procedure.
Cancel your plans.
Oh boy, I made an appointment with my proctologist.
And join the party.
I don't want anything. I just don't want to go outside.
Airheads, rated PG-13. Parents strongly caution. Sneak preview tomorrow.
The Lone Rangers have heavy metal dreams and a single demo tape they can't get anyone to play. The solution? Hijack an AM rock station and hold the DJs hostage until they agree to broadcast the band's tape. Adam, what do you think of Airheads?
Now, this was a movie that I freaking loved as a kid. So this came out when I was 10, and this was during a time when I was obsessed with SNL, and I loved Adam Sandler. And so this had a lot of things in it that really appealed to me, and I thought it was just a blast. But revisiting it now, I'm just like, oof, it's still fun, it's still nostalgic, but is it a good movie? Absolutely not. It is not a good movie.
Yeah, it sure is a thing.
This is now, I don't know. So it's Michael Lehman. I don't know if I saw any other than his TV work. I'm not sure if I saw any of his other movies. Oh, he did Heathers. He directed Heathers.
Okay.
So he also did Hudson Hawk. And I feel like Hudson Hawk and Airheads have almost the same DNA. Not with as far as the plot or anything, but just how the script is somewhat incomprehensible. You're just random things that people say where you're just like, what? Huh? What does that even mean? Some of this stuff, it was they were trying to use modern slang and let's use this metalhead nomenclature, and it just didn't didn't necessarily work. It ended up turning out to be like just random nonsense.
It's as if there was the research material for this movie. It was one magazine article about this one subculture.
They read a Spin magazine article.
No. Probably not even.
Modern
Maybe
metal.
just like one paragraph in like the talk of the town section of the New Yorker. Because it feels like the entire idea of who this movie is about is just a launching point. It is just there to acknowledge the fact that the movie knows that this subculture exists and that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at like heavy metal culture, this is not an accurate representation of it, even in the slightest bit.
I mean, this is not an accurate representation of culture.
Yeah, I mean, even like the music in this is not very representative of what metalheads would listen to. It's, I don't know.
I mean, you really got to start with the. If you're really trying to figure out the exact trajectory of this movie, you really have to start with, like you mentioned, how the dialogue. It's sometimes hard for the dialogue to be funny because you're not exactly sure why these words are being spoken in that order.
Yeah. Like the one, it was Brendan Fraser who at one point he says the line, "Quit necking on me, you femmes." And you're just like, what? Quit necking on me, you femmes.
Like, I am taken by this line, but certainly not for the reason it me to be, just because I thought that's a combination of syllables.
And like some of the names they call each
not okay.
Yeah, like some of the names that they call each other, you're just like, I mean, I was around in 1994. I remember the slang names that you would call people, and a lot of the things that they say in this just had to be totally made up for this movie. But you know, it's still a movie that has its charms. It feels very much like when they started adapting SNL movies. It feels it's not an SNL movie, but it feels very much like yeah, it feels like it could have been, and it also feels very similar to the 90s Sandler movies like Billy Madison or even like the early like the 90s Chris Farley movies. Even though I wish Chris Farley is in this, although I wish he was in it more. Because we always need more Farley.
Absolutely. To your point, it does feel like a movie based on an SNL sketch. The problem is it feels like a movie based on like a recurring SNL sketch that nobody really likes.
Yeah. Like one of those SNL sketches that doesn't have an ending that just sort of ends and you're just like, what was that?
Yeah, or even not one that people just outright dislike, but just one that no one cares for. It'd be like if they made an entire movie of like
the Rob Schneider character, making copies. That guy,
or I thought like maybe like an entire movie of like the Californians or something. Like, not really what we were looking for there.
I mean, I think that at some point we will probably do a whole episode on SNL movies, but I mean, they did make Stuart Saves His Family. Like the fact that movie exists and It's Pat. The fact that these movies exist, and then like I think that Airheads definitely has that's the same DNA in it for sure.
Yeah, you could have convinced me that this was based on an SNL sketch.
Yeah, I mean, I even like waited for the credits to see if Lorne Michaels produced this because I was like, it feels like a Lorne Michaels production. I still enjoy it. I don't know how much of my enjoyment of this is nostalgia, but I still going back and rewatching it now. I mean, I've seen this movie so many times that I don't know if I no longer find it funny or I just the jokes don't land for me anymore because I've seen it so many times. I'm not sure. I think Chris Farley still made me laugh, though.
Oh, yeah, he's great in it. I was about to say that just personally speaking, it wasn't terribly funny for me a lot of the time. Not that it was entirely without jokes that landed. It just didn't really hit. It did feel like jokes that, once again, feeding into like the idea that it felt like it was based on something. It felt like a lot of jokes that you felt more familiar than funny in a way. Like they were playing them very much as if you should already be familiar with some idea of it, even though you shouldn't have because these are original characters.
It's another kind of messy movie. They don't really waste much time in setting up these characters before the big, before they take everybody hostage. They get into it pretty quickly. And
I found I think I told you, I found the seeming like a delayed police response to this on-air hijacking to be a bit confusing.
Yeah, how it was just
like eventually the building's surrounded, but at the start there's like one police car there.
Yeah, there's one guy.
Like they just sent one person around to check it out. And I'm like, this was literally a radio station being taken over. No matter who was doing it by like armed assailants, like this would have been like under this, like the governor would have been briefed on this.
Yeah, I mean the logic and realism behind what unfolds in this movie is not. It's not. We're not even close to being within the realm
I know
of realism.
that's not a helpful path to go down, but I just wanted to register that I was kind of amused by that.
I love the frequency in which they will go outside when they could easily be like shot by a sniper or even arrested, and they just allow them to go outside and ham it up with the crowd that forms and stuff.
Hanging out. They're just like in there, like you literally would have been like there would have been like a direct negotiating phone call to the attorney general.
Yeah. So we mentioned Brendan Fraser, mentioned Adam Sandler. You have Steve Buscemi in there, and he's the third member of the Lone Rangers, which is the band. In the radio station, you have Michael McKean, who is the, I guess, manager of the station. His name is Milo. And you have Judd Nelson in there as Jimmy Wing, who's this like record executive, wearing the most 90s suit I think I've ever seen. It looks like it's about 10 sizes too big for him. He's just wearing that giant 90s power suit.
I like how every suit in these movies looks like just a completely like a completely serious version of like the giant suit that David Byrne wears in Stop Making Sense.
I was just gonna say it's like one size below Stop Making Sense. Ernie Hudson is in there. He plays the cop O'Malley. You have Amy Locane as Kayla, who is Brendan Fraser's character's girlfriend, who she's got some anger issues in this movie. She just loses her mind over everything.
Oh, same.
But yeah, but she was a fun character. Nina Zemesco as Susie. You have Reggie Cathy in there as Marcus, who is another, I guess he's a DJ. I'm not really sure what his role is. I'm pretty sure he's another DJ in the radio station. You have David Arquette as Carter, who's like, I guess he's also another DJ. It's like sort of this like punk rock surfer guy. Michael Richards as Doug, who does this sort of Die Hard type subplot that's doesn't really go anywhere and it's not very interesting. I mean, there's some kind of funny physical comedy from Michael Richards in there. Joe Montaigne as Ian. It was like the main DJ. So you have a pretty good cast in there. Solid comedic lineup.
Mm-hmm.
It was fine. I think this was, I don't know. And David Arquette was annoying, but he's annoying in everything he's in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess the best comparison, like the best response I could come up with on how I feel about this is just to continue that like adaptation analogy. It feels like it's referencing things that don't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like it's referencing things I don't know. Like a lot of the jokes are just not landing with me because I'm not sure where to approach them.
So like if you haven't seen this movie before, they take a radio station hostage to play their demo tape, but the guns that they have are toy guns, because Steve Buscemi's character works at a toy store and they banned all these guns, these water guns, for looking too real. So they end up taking everybody hostage with these toy guns. And then of course, like almost everybody involved develops Stockholm syndrome, and like it ends up working with them at the end. And there's this it gets really ridiculous at the end when they fly in they helicopter in a stage for them to perform. They perform on the stage at the end on top of the radio station.
My favorite part about this movie, I do have parts of the movie I like, and I just do like every continually ridiculous plot development. Like, we can't stress that enough. When this movie is good, it is good because it is completely divorced itself from reality. No, and I don't mean like our reality, its own reality. Like, it breaks the rules of its own reality.
Yeah, there's a scene when Beavis and Butthead call in to the radio station, so you got a Beavis and Butthead in there, and then there's one great scene when they learn that Chaz's real name is Chester, and like that's a huge thing. Like, that is a big problem, and he like tells his girlfriend or whatever, like, you can leave me, I was a nerd. And they're like, and then all these other people will start talking about how they've done nerdy things, and you have Lemmy in there from Motorhead saying something, and this other guy goes, I used to wear corduroy pants. Harold Ramis is in there too, as this cop who's pretending to be like a record executive. He's only in there for one scene. So it's pretty ridiculous, I gotta say.
Our final film this month may take place in the 70s, but it has an undeniable 90s feel. Released on August 13th, 1999, and directed by Adam Rifkin, this is Detroit Rock City.
How badly do you want to see the greatest show on earth?
Kiss sucks!
No matter who you are,
We're going to Detroit!
no matter where you live,
The night is young, filled with possibilities.
on August 13th,
It's a girl walking along the side of the highway. They make scary movies that start out like that.
But they make porno movies that start out like that, too.
all roads lead to Detroit Rock City. Rated R. Starts Friday, August 13th.
In 1978, a Kiss concert was an epoch-making event. For the three teen fans in Detroit Rock City, getting tickets to the sold-out show becomes the focal point of their existence. They'll do anything for tickets, including competing in a strip club's amateur night contest, taking on religious protesters, and even robbing a convenience store. Ken, what'd you think of Detroit Rock City?
I thought it was. I feel like I'm saying that a lot. It was. The concept of Kiss as a band was the source of many a childhood trauma. Because they're supposed to look frightening. And I was an easily frightened child. I was just frightened by just like people in general, just the appearance of people. So once people start purposely looking more frightening, that was game over for me.
I never liked Kiss. I still don't like Kiss, but I mean, it's definitely not my generation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also that combined with the fact that like loud rock music, like I couldn't handle loud sounds as a child either. So this was just a whole lot of I don't want to even think about the fact that this exists. Now it's like, whatever. I don't mind. I just don't particularly have strong feelings about it. I'm just thinking it's just very funny for me to watch a movie entirely about a pursuit to see this band when I hadn't thought about this band in years. And the last time I'd seriously thought about this band was when I was a very easily frightened child.
I appreciate Kiss for their star power, like just how big they were and how obsessed people were with Kiss, and the merchandising,
this, singular energy to them.
Yeah, just the fact that they were more than just a band. They were like a whole. I mean, it was like a performance. It was like a whole stage show. You know, like they took on this persona, and going to a Kiss concert wasn't just like seeing a band. It was like seeing a show.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they had like Kiss lunchboxes and bed sheets and like comic books and pinball machines and all of this stuff, I think is really interesting. And I'm not sure, like I can't think of too many other bands that have had that level of pop culture like saturation.
I know it's such a cliche for it to say about something, but it just, feels true. Like in terms of like a pop cultural force in one field that expands into other ones is very much like a brand.
Yeah, and so with that, getting into the
anyway, let's talk about this movie.
The movie, it was completely believable to me that a group of teens would be this obsessed with a band and willing to go to these lengths to try to see them. And I saw this movie when it came out in 99, and I enjoyed it then, and I still enjoy it now. I think that movies like this, I don't know, movies like this don't seem to exist too much anymore. We don't see a lot of movies like this anymore. We did see a lot of movies like this back during this time when, you know, the kind of teen gross out movie was popular with movies like American Pie and like Road Trip. This was different in that it did take place in 1978, and Adam Rifkin is clearly someone who grew up during this time and has a very clear handle on the vibe that was happening during that time. Like the number of 70s references and things that are injected into this movie. You know, you have a lot of the criticisms on disco and stuff like that in there, and it all felt very authentic. And I thought that a lot of it was pretty funny. I mean, a lot of the kind of gross out stuff didn't really appeal to me. I remember it didn't appeal to me back then either.
Yeah.
But it was still a fun movie. I enjoyed the soundtrack. I thought the soundtrack was quite good.
Yeah, I think my tolerance for these kinds of movies, just because there are so many of them, is sort of, I guess, dependent on a particular into them. And what actually did make me very interested in this movie, just on a conceptual level, is this podcast, just by the merit of its existence, is about kind of, at least very much for your perspective that you bring to what we discuss, it's about kind of examining things that might have been otherwise just sort of existed as objects of nostalgia. And so what I find very interesting is when we get to review a movie that people might have nostalgia for, that it itself has nostalgia for another era.
Yeah. This is a movie that has developed a bit of a cult following over the years, and it wasn't a successful movie when it came out at all. But I think that it has certainly developed a cult following, and I can see why. I mean, there's a lot of these comedies that may have not been critically or financially successful that have somehow, you know, developed a strong following over the years. And, you know, there's some scenes in this that I find to be pretty iconic, mainly the one when they're in the bathroom at the beginning and the girl is in the stall next to them. Like that scene is one that I find to be very memorable in this movie.
That turns out to be such an elaborate set piece.
Yeah.
Like, it's just gonna be like a throwaway joke, and then that turns into like
I say that the gross out stuff didn't appeal to me, but that scene is the exception. I still think that scene is really funny. You have a lot of sort of big 90s teen actors in here. Edward Furlong, who I would say probably shortly after this movie, it was when he kind of fell off. I mean, he's still working and everything, and he's going to be in the new Terminator movie, but his career certainly faltered a bit. I'd say probably, looking at his filmography, I'd say it was definitely after this movie. Or maybe, I guess I would lump this into when he was still pretty big. And he did Animal Factory right after this, and Animal Factory was not a particularly, I don't think that was a particularly well-received movie. I remember really enjoying that, but it was that was the one that was directed by Steve Buscemi. But after that, it was just sort of, downhill for him, unfortunately. But this is the movie that he made right after American History X, and you have Giuseppe Andrews in there. Giuseppe Andrews he's an interesting character. He was in a lot of movies during this time. He was probably most famous for being in Independence Day. He was one of Randy Quaid's kids in Independence Day, but he was also in Never Been Kissed, and he was in Cabin Fever, I think. And I think he was also in like Cabin Fever 2. I think he was in the sequel to that. But then he kind of stopped acting and he became a director. And he directs these like super like micro budget kind of John Waters, Harmony Korine-esque movies out of a trailer park where he lives. And he used to make like tons of them, like tons of movies, just rapid firing these movies out. I haven't seen much of him lately, but I think it was in 2014, I want to say, Adam Rifkin directed a documentary called Giuseppe Makes a Movie that sort of documents the process that Giuseppe Andrews has with making one of his no-budget movies. Really interesting character. You have James DeBello in there as Trip. This is another guy from Cabin Fever, but he was also in American Pie and Scary Movie 2, I think. And then Sam Huntington as Jam. And Sam Huntington he's in a ton of stuff.
Yeah,
as well.
It's definitely an interesting to look at the cast, and I think the cast, like all these people at these specific points in their careers, also helps like that. I guess almost it feels like nostalgia upon nostalgia that fans of this movie would have.
Yeah, definitely. Lin Shaye is in there as Jam's mom.
Always good to see Lin Shaye.
Yeah, and Lin Shaye in this is her character is so over the top with the like religious stuff. So his mom is this like uber conservative religious nut who she hates the music of Kiss and she thinks that they're devil worshippers and tries to prevent him from going to the concert and all that. Really, it's sort of an outlandish character.
I felt a little bit sad with that character because even though it's just like a comic character, I just thought 1978 is like the very edge of time in American history when these people were just like individuals and not like an organized political force. Like this is before they became an organized voting bloc.
And I remember there was, I mean, I don't remember, but I remember reading about the fact that there was a lot of protests and people coming out against Kiss, like doing the record burnings and stuff like that. This was before the whole like satanic panic thing happened too.
Yeah,
or maybe like right at the beginning.
Yeah,
of it.
I guess maybe it was sort of bubbling up at that point. Yeah, we need to talk more. We definitely need to talk more about moral panic because there were plenty throughout the 70s and 80s, but there were definitely a ton in the 90s as well. That feels like another point of discussion.
Yeah. I mean, certainly the satanic panic bled into the 90s for sure. I mean, you definitely saw that in the early 90s, probably throughout even close to the mid 90s. You still saw that happening. You also had Melanie Lynskey in there in what I didn't even remember that she was in this. So it must have been a pretty early role for her.
Natasha Lyonne's in this as well.
Yeah, and Natasha Lyonne is in it as well. Natasha Lyonne she was on quite the run there. She was in Slums of Beverly Hills that came out in September of 98, which I still love Slums of Beverly Hills. I think it's an incredible comedy. Right after that, she did American Pie, Detroit Rock City, and then she also did But I'm a Cheerleader, which was released on August 11th, 2000, but it did premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival September of 99. So nice run for her. There was some fun stuff in there. They did some creative camera work in there. There was that like split diopter shot that they did where they would, so they went from like a split diopter shot to like a split screen shot that I thought was pretty effective. And then there was also that scene at the beginning when Lin Shaye throws away the Kiss record in the trash can, and then the camera goes to this like overhead shot and you see like the needle, the record needle dropping down on the record that's in the trash can and starts to spin. So there was some nice creative camera work in this that I didn't remember and certainly didn't expect. There's also that kind of, I think they were on an elevator going to the radio station when they won the tickets, and it was like sort of, they did this like spinning, the camera was like spinning over top of them when they're on the elevator, and that was a really cool shot too.
Yeah, there's some definitely very interesting choices just in general in the movie. Like, it is sort of easy to group it in with other things, but at the same time, yeah, it's definitely got a profile of its own.
And the poster was a great poster that we definitely don't see posters like that anymore.
Not at all.
Man, who did that poster? Just so I can.
I pulled it up. I pulled up the wiki page for the film, and it's theatrical release poster by Phil Robertson. Then I googled it, and a site comes up, and that looks like that's it. Yeah, he's done a lot of posters like this.
Yeah, so Phil Roberts did the poster for Grandma's Boy, and I remember like that movie. That movie's quite bad as well. That movie's really bad, actually. But I always remember seeing finding the poster art to be like just so good. And he did the Bad News Bears, the one with Billy Bob Thornton. I love that style. I feel like it's not a style that we really see anymore. He did the poster art for Hot Dog the movie. A lot of these kind of goofball comedies.
Rugrats in Paris.
Yeah, I see that. Rugrats in Paris. That's definitely not necessarily the style. But I mean, I give him props for changing up his style to make it look like Rugrats. Man, but he did the Wild Thornberrys movie poster too. He did a bunch of the National Lampoon stuff, and he did the Rodney Dangerfield's Back to School. Man, I love that.
Yeah,
love that poster design. Yeah, other than that, I would say Detroit Rock City is maybe worth a light recommend. I mean,
yeah,
it's a fairly banal 90s sex comedy that just doesn't have a whole lot of sex in it.
And a heavily subjective amount of comedy.
I believe that will do it for this month. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed our little musical journey into the 90s. This is definitely a topic that we'll be returning to in the future. If you have a second, please consider giving us a review on iTunes or your podcast service of choice. And feel free to email us at 90s@filmpulse.net or sending us a DM on Twitter or Facebook at 90spod. For Ken Bakley, my name's Adam Patterson, and this has been Saved by the 90s.
Bye, everyone.